Street, Wednesday, July 13, 2022, public hearing for the City of Tampa's Architectural Review Commission. Welcome, everyone. I'm Susan Klaus-Smith. I am the chair of the commission. I am also a registered architect. If you are here to present a project, you will have limited time to make your presentation, so we suggest being thorough but concise. When coming to the microphone, you will need to identify yourself and your relationship to the project. The commissioners will not ask any questions during your presentation, and your project should be presented in the following order: the site plan, the elevations, the architectural details, and the wall sections. Staff will then present their report, and we will then ask for public comment. Following the presentation, the commissioners will begin asking questions in the same order as the presentation. When coming to the microphone, please state and spell your name clearly if you are here to speak for or against a project. Your time will be limited to 3 minutes, so take some time now to summarize your comments because 3 minutes goes by very quickly. Following the public comment, the applicant will have 5 minutes for a rebuttal, and then the public hearing will then be closed. The only comments which will be allowed after the public hearing is closed will be in response to any questions from the commissioners. The commissioners will then discuss the case and will make their decision based on the city ordinance, chapter 27 of City Zoning Code, the design guidelines, the Secretary of Interior standards, Historic Preservation Development Review or HPDRC comments, and the testimony given at the public hearing. Please remember that the ARC can only act on items that are within our specific jurisdictional responsibility. All owners and agents are independently responsible to obtain any appropriate permits and or approvals. Now, if you haven't already done so, please do silence your cell phones, and I will ask my fellow commissioners to introduce themselves, starting on my left.
Shauna Boyd, interior designer.
John Prokop, I practice architecture. Good evening. My name is Stephen Sutton. I'm a registered architect. I also hold the architectural historian chair.
And with us tonight, we have Ron Vila, Elaine Lunn, Aminta Owen, and our attorney, Kamaria Pettis-Mackel.
Good evening, Commissioners. Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the City Attorney's Office. Will the Commissioners please state whether or not they have any conflicts of interest regarding any of the items that are on the agenda?
I have none.
None.
Thank you. Additionally, will the Commissioners please state whether or not they've had any ex parte communications regarding any of the items that are on the agenda?
I have none.
I have none.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Ron Vila, I'm staff for Historic Preservation. We have one continuation, which is ARC 22-168 for the address of 5601 North Branch Avenue. That request by the agent to continue to the October 3rd, 2022 public hearing at 5:30 p.m. If we could get a motion for that, please.
I move for a continuation for ARC 22-168 for the property located at 5601 North Branch Avenue within the Seminole Heights District to be continued to the October 3rd, 2022 public hearing at 5:30.
I second the motion.
All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We're ready for the swear-in. Everybody that wishes to testify, please stand up and raise your right hand, including staff. Ms. Owen will swear everybody in.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm any testimony you will be giving in today's hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
We're ready to move forward for the first case this evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. Elaine Lund, Historic Preservation staff.
You can come forward already if the applicant, you can move forward to the, thank you.
The first item on the agenda this evening is ARC 22-180, located at 506 East Mohawk Avenue in the Seminole Heights Historic District. This is a request for a front yard fence in this district. The property is a recently built house, and it's located on the north side of Mohawk Avenue between Central and Cherokee Avenues. I'll go ahead and move to the photo presentation here, and you can see that property highlighted in green here. on the 1920s Sandbar map, you'll notice that it is only part of a parcel
When she finishes, you know how to move around.
of a platted lot, excuse me, and that there was a residence at that time on just the west half of that lot. This is the overall map of the Seminole Heights Historic District. Again, you can see the subject property there in green, about midway down the district, just north of Hillsborough Avenue. And then this is the present-day aerial showing the subject site outlined in green. You can see the proximity to Hillsborough Avenue and the interstate in this picture. Again, Central Avenue is to the west, and Cherokee Avenue is, along with the interstate, is just to the east. This is the front of the residence. This is looking at the east side of the building. And then you can get a little view of the west side of the property there. This is the rear of the house, and you can see a little bit of the accessory structure, and here's another shot of the accessory structure there. This is the building directly to the west. We're still on Mohawk, facing north. There is no building directly to the east, as that's the alley. This is looking south across the street. At the, you're looking here at a parking lot, and then beyond that is the Starbucks that's at the corner of Central and Hillsborough. This is looking east along this section of Mohawk Avenue. And then this is looking west towards Central Avenue. I mentioned the alley. This is a photo looking north into the alley from Mohawk. And then from behind the, or next to the subject site, looking south along the alley. As you've seen from these photos, the front yard fence is currently existing. This was a code enforcement violation case, and the property owner is here to request permission for the fence at this time. I should also note that there are a few letters in your packets for your review, and you can look at those in addition to the staff report as the owner presents a request. Thank you.
Okay. So my name is Cecilia Wareham. I spelled CECILIA-WAREHAM. I am the owner of 506 East Mohawk Avenue. This is my home. I do have the survey here that shows my house compared to the others. As you can see, my house is located partially on two other home sites that was divided up. So essentially, I'm the back of lot 6. And that's just what that pretty much demonstrates. And if that lot were not sold separately, that technically would have been someone's backyard, and actually a 6-foot fence would have technically been allowed. This is just a diagram of the 4-foot fence and the 6-foot fence around the home. This is the dimensions for the front yard fence and the spacing between each. This is just a video of the surrounding area. You kind of already showed all this, but I wanted to really focus in on the area, the surrounding area, which are 3 commercial buildings. One is abandoned, which is the red one here, and where all the homeless people stay, which is pretty much my main argument, is that I am at the end of a street. There's no other residential homes on my street. The only one is to my right, which is the blue house. And all the homeless people like to gather at the end of the street, and they're increasing in numbers significantly because of the bridge construction that's or the highway construction that's taking place currently. But what this video shows is the area where they all hang out and hide and sleep and do drugs. But you can see the fence right there, that's where they love to hide, as well as the back area. If I can use the arrow. So right here is where they stay, and then right here, and actually have drone shots with the homeless people in the drone shots as I was doing this, which I'll get to here in a second. But you can see in relation to my home, they're literally right across the street. So I constantly see them. They're constantly coming up to my house, constantly bothering me, asking for money. This is just pretty much a bird's eye view. This is my house. I circled all the red in, all the commercial businesses are circled in red. And then the yellow is the abandoned building. So I'm literally surrounded by all commercial buildings and the abandoned one. And the blue one, this is the only residential home. So these are the drone pictures that I took, and afterwards I realized that there was actually a person in there as I was taking them. And then this is the other area. This is the abandoned building. This is the other area where they like to hide, circled in red. This is where they, this is down that little alleyway where the fence is that I just pointed out, where they keep all their garbage, their box mattresses, everything. They're there every single night. This is actually a video of a homeless person, what I have to deal with every day. Obviously intoxicated. And it's these types of people that are constantly coming up and on my property. And I do live by myself, so it's extremely uncomfortable. I'll try to fast forward this a little bit. So now he's coming to my property with obviously things in his hands. And the police were later called by another resident. Now this is actually him going down the alleyway where you can see this is the fence where they hide. He's headed there right now, and you can actually see him going into it. That's their spot right there. And all their junk. And there he goes. So, that's that. Here's another one. This is Ginger's parking lot. This is where a lot of the issues, this is actually pretty much where most of them happen. This was in the middle of the night. There was a man out there with all of his junk. And the police were called, and he was being very combative and argumentative with them. And then here's another video, them making him leave. Oop, crap, sorry. He ended up fighting with them, and it turned it into a huge mess. Anyway, moving on. Is there any way to play sound? Or no? Is there any way to play sound?
If it's connected onto the, you should be able to. There's a volume right there on the screen. No, on your.
Over on this screen?
No.
On this screen?
Right.
It says it's all the way up. Okay, maybe this is on mute. Okay, got it. Sorry.
No, well, I wouldn't necessarily.
Oh, it goes really loud? Okay. All right, so this video, I sped it up, but this is a guy using Ginger's salon, like either their hose bib or something over there. I'm outside, and this is just one angle, and then he comes up and it starts bothering me. Luckily, I had a couple of vehicles out front. This one is the one I need the sound on. can hear it. So this is him coming from a different way. I can't hear the sound though. Two of these are pretty important to have this sound. Can we try that again?
Yeah, I can ask,
They're coming out. They moved their head out. It's not playing now, it's not gonna play through here.
It's not playing.
It's not gonna play through here, it's not playing now.
Okay. Well, two of these videos show two homeless men asking for money, and then one actually gets into an argument with my boyfriend, which is in this video, but if you can't hear it, there's no sense in playing it. But it's this man here, and he stands there for a couple minutes arguing back and forth with my boyfriend, who tells him to go away, we're at home, and he just keeps kind of going. This is the end of, so I'm turning right onto Hillsborough, or to Mohawk, and these shows pretty much where all the homeless people always hang out, and, which is at the very end of the street. And this is one guy just kind of passed out at the end of the street hanging out, and that's my house. They love to hang out right there. This was, I think, a drug deal. This Camaro came by, showed up for about 5 minutes, dropped off some things. There were probably about 8, 9 homeless people there, all gathered together waiting for him. And then if you slow it down, you can actually see them smoking things. And then the Camaro left shortly after. And this is again at the dead end that I just showed you. And then this is them afterwards, just all kind of hanging out. And then right after that, police came, but they were gone by then. And I've had to call the police numerous times because of these kinds of issues. This is just what they do. They're constantly back there in that fence. I don't know what they're doing. In this video, you can actually see 3 homeless people getting together. One right there, there's that guy, and then a third one comes from the side. They all get together and then go somewhere. There's a third guy. And then also, aside from the safety aspect of it, I went around the neighborhood, and there are countless homes that have very less attractive fences that are not approved through the ARC. I'm not going to point them out specifically in their addresses, but as you can see, they're highlighted in yellow. There's a number of them, so I'm not kind of sure why I'm being singled out in this case. Here's some pictures of them. Obviously, very unattractive fencing. And here's a couple more. And then here are the letters from a couple neighbors who are saying that they have no problem with my fence. This is a neighbor that's just a couple doors down, if you want to read this.
they have a copy of the letter.
You guys do. And I'll move on to the next one. This is actually my direct neighbor, the ones, the blue house, the one that touches mine. this is the last one. And this is from my boyfriend, who has been at my home when a lot of these incidents have occurred.
Okay. We do have all these letters in our packet.
Okay, so you've
We
already
have
read through
reviewed
them? Okay, perfect. So, yeah, my main argument, though, is pretty much for the safety aspect of everything, and the homeless gathering around my home, and it getting worse because of the highway. I understand that the ARC has rules and regulations, but I've done my best to comply and made what I think is an attractive fence. But without a fence, I would feel very unsafe living where I live currently. So that's pretty much my argument.
And that concludes your presentation for now. Okay, we will go on to the staff report. Ms. Lund?
Okay. Elaine Lund, Historic Preservation Staff. The Seminole Heights Design Guidelines on pages 90 through 91 discuss the guidelines for fences and walls. The, excuse me. The design guidelines state that it is not permissible to place a fence in or around the front yard. Therefore, the application is not consistent with the design guidelines. That's the sum of our staff report, so I'm available if you have questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lund. If there's anyone who would like to speak for or against this case, you may come up at this time. Anyone here? Seeing none, we'll close that portion of the hearing and we'll begin asking questions, starting on my left.
I have no questions.
I have basically one question, is if there was not a homeless problem in your neighborhood, would you be putting a fence up?
Not in the front yard, probably in the backyard, though.
Was the backyard fence also permitted, or did the backyard fence get ARC approval?
No, I didn't know that it needed ARC approval. I was under the impression there was no HOA, so that's why I went ahead and just did it.
It's not an HOA.
Right, I know. But I didn't know that there was like an ARC that needed to approve it.
Ms. Lund, can you please verify to the board the parameters regarding the backyard fences? If there are any.
Yes, backyard fences are approvable in the Seminole Heights Historic Districts, in the district. The design guidelines state that the dominant fence type today is unpainted wood boards, and that the fences are most commonly placed around the perimeter of rear yards. Fence heights should conform to the City of Tampa codes, which limits the height of a rear and side yard fence to 6 feet. And the design guidelines go on to say that fences or walls along the primary facade should fall behind the building setback line.
If the homeless situation was improved, would you take the fence down?
No, I spent a considerable amount of money on it. I would not want to take it down.
Even though it's against the guidelines?
I wouldn't want to take it down.
Okay, I have no further questions.
I'm happy to make adjustments to it, though.
It's a question for staff. I apologize for my late arrival. However, this comes before the board because of all of the fencing or only the fencing in the front yard?
This is only for the fencing in the front yard. Rear yard fences in the Seminole Heights Historic District are routinely reviewed and approved by staff, so we'll do that under a separate application.
Thank you. No further questions.
I have no question.
I have no questions either. You have 5 minutes for rebuttal if there's anything you'd like to add before we close the hearing and we start discussing the case.
I think I've said everything I needed to say.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and we'll discuss the case. Anyone? Any comment?
This is not the first time fences have come before this board in a front yard vein that are brought about for security concerns. I still have an issue with the fact that although there is a valid concern on the security matter, that the fences do not conform to the standards established for the historic district. And there's a certain matter of pattern that is expected within the conforming properties of our historic district. And the deviations for such really rub me raw. It's just my personal opinion on the matter. The last time we've seen a fenced front yard, I voted against that. I'm not inclined personally right now to, unless otherwise convinced, to approve this one as well too, because I find it entirely alien to the context of what Seminole Heights is, was, and is trying to be.
I understand that there's a very clear security issue here. I also can see, we've seen several fences come through, whether it's front, rear, or side yards. We didn't see dimensions, but it looks like the side and rear yards comply with city as well as architectural review. or
Agreed.
So it's really the front fence, and that's all we're really here to discuss anyway. And to me, it seems reasonable to approve something when there's a safety issue clearly at hand.
So if this was a matter of a variance, I would agree, but we're not talking about a variance, we're talking about whether or not it's appropriate according to the design guidelines. And right now, what we have before us is a clear violation that there should be no fences in the front yards allowed. I do understand the security issue. I do understand living on the edge of a neighborhood such as this. I myself moved into a home in a really tough neighborhood 25 years ago. We had gunshots every night, had my garage broken into at least 5 times in 1 year. Had numerous people walking through our neighborhood in the alleys, through our side lot that didn't belong there. Maybe homeless, maybe not. Very tough to live in those conditions. And I completely understand the concern and how difficult it is to live with that. But there's a balance here as well. And, you know, if this was a variance request, perhaps we could talk about design elements that could come into play and allow this fence to stand. As it is not even in compliance with what we would consider historic in terms of connecting back into the neighborhood for the front yard. So I'm perplexed because I support the need for the security, but I also think there are other factors at play here. Unfortunately, they're absent landowners, it seems, that are adding to the conditions that are causing you all this grief and, you know, security risk. And I'm not so sure that the fence ultimately is going to protect.
Yes, there is that attractive nuisance issue that is really well beyond the applicant's control. I would be inclined, due to current circumstances, to consider the idea of a temporary measure of your personal and property, you know, protection. You know, if and when at some point in time where this street block adjacencies change to a more accommodating or a more secure sort of a situation, but we have no control over that either.
We would, even if we could say it was a temporary measure, we would have no idea of what time in history it would change over.
Absolutely.
So, and then it's an objective condition.
And Kamaria Pettis-Mackle from this city attorney's office, she can, you're issuing a certificate
It's
of.
either yes or
appropriateness.
no.
Right, correct.
It's either
You cannot-
good or it's not good.
Correct, correct. You cannot put a time restriction on it.
Thank you very much.
I have a question for staff. Can I ask staff a question?
We need to reopen we have to reopen the hearing. If you want, we can.
Well, maybe we'll discuss it first.
Go ahead.
Would there have been a way that we could approve this as a variance instead of a?
It didn't come before us as a variance request. Any other comments?
I'd like to move to reopen the public hearing.
I second the motion.
All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No one? Okay, go ahead. We'll reopen.
If this came before us as a variance, it would still be in conflict with the design guidelines.
That is correct. However, I'm not certain, perhaps legal can state whether or not it would be possible for this to be a variance request.
That's not why we're here. So
Okay.
we're here because it's a certificate of appropriateness that has the design, the key is, as staff stated, is the design guidelines. That's why this is before the board, because it's inconsistent with the design guidelines. It's not about a variance.
I think the issue that we're having is like when we when we give final approval on a certificate of appropriateness, we, like, our verbiage is the proposed project is consistent with the design guidelines because these following reasons.
Correct.
Whereas in a variance, there's a burden of proof, which is
Correct.
what she brought to us today
Well,
is,
and that's just the information that the applicant provided, but
Right.
you still have your boundaries in which you approve or disapprove a certificate of appropriateness, and that's why you're here. It's because it doesn't meet the design guidelines, as opposed to the applicant having the burden to prove a hardship criteria. That's not why this application is before you. There are no hardship criteria to prove for a certificate of appropriateness.
right.
So basically, the wrong application is coming.
I didn't say that. The violation, the issue is, it's not in conflict with it's not consistent with the design guidelines. Your parameters are, doesn't meet the Seminole Heights District design guidelines for the front yard fence.
So in other words, if this came to us as a variance instead of a certificate of appropriateness, then we'd have an entirely different basket of matters to consider.
Correct.
And what I want to caution too is even if it came through that way, it doesn't mean it would meet the
Absolutely
variance
true.
That's correct.
requirements.
Yes, but again, we're just here to discuss the design guidelines.
Any other questions for staff or the applicant? Ma'am, you have another rebuttal period if you want to offer any additional testimony.
I just want to point out again too that this technically should have been a backyard to the blue house in the picture. No one goes down that street at all. It's a dead end street. A 6-foot fence should have actually been allowed there because again, it's someone's side backyard that my house was built on. And they
So I have a question for you. What is your address?
506 East Mohawk.
Thank you.
I'm just putting that out there. But I don't really have anything else to add.
Okay. Right. We'll go ahead and close the hearing again. So when your address is on Mohawk, that's your front. And so we can't look at it in the way it was historically.
I understand.
There wasn't even a house there, so
I understand.
it doesn't come into play, unfortunately. Anyone willing to make a motion at this time?
I just want to say that unfortunately, for consistency's sake, I feel that we have to turn down this request. We have made other people take down fences, and I know it's a security issue. Again, I question in my mind as to whether the city is doing the proper job of informing people that once they move into a historic district, they have responsibilities. But at the same time, you were aware of the fact that you were in a historic district.
I wasn't aware of the homeless problem.
I feel that our hands are tied and that we just have to turn down the request.
Anyone willing to make a motion at this time?
I move to deny a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in ARC 22-180 for the property located at 506 East Mohawk Avenue, because based upon the finding of fact and the proposed project fence and actually built in place is inconsistent with the Seminole Heights guidelines, particularly respecting fences and walls, pages 90 to 91 of the City of Tampa, for the following reasons: that a fence is not permitted in the front yard.
A second, please.
I'll second.
All in favor of the denial, please state aye and raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 4-1.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next case on the agenda this evening is ARC 22-224, located in the Tampa Heights Historic District at the address of 504 East Amelia Avenue. This is a request for a accessory building on a lot where there is an existing structure. The existing structure was built in 1995 and is therefore non-contributing to the district. And at this time, I'll move to the photo presentation. The property is shown in green here on the 1920s Sanborn map, on sort of on the right side of your screen. You can see that there was a house on this lot in the 1920s and an accessory structure to the rear off the alley. This is the location map showing the entire Tampa Heights Historic District. And again, the property is shown highlighted in green. This is a present-day aerial. You can see where the site is located. It's outlined in green on Amelia Avenue, just east of Central Avenue and west of Grove Avenue. This is the existing structure on the site. This is its south facade. This is looking at the property from just a bit from the west, so you're seeing its west side and the existing parking configuration. This is the east side of the building. And this is the rear of the existing structure. This is the property just to the east on Amelia Avenue. And this is the building just to the west on Amelia Avenue. And then looking across the street, this is the property on the south side of Amelia. Here we're looking east along Amelia Avenue toward Grove Street, and beyond that, the wall of the interstate. And here we're looking west, so the property would be to your right along Amelia Avenue towards Central Avenue. This is in the alley behind the subject site. This is looking to the east. And then, again, with the subject site now to your left in the alley looking to the west toward Central Avenue. That concludes the photo presentation, so at this time I'll ask the applicant to come forward and present his request.
Good evening, board members. Ricky Pederica, 308 East 7th Avenue, Dartmouth. I have been sworn. With us today, if there are questions, is Greg Robabaro, the owner of the property of 504 East Amelia. The architect of record is Nicole Pederica, my wife. We both reside at 501 East Amelia. Greg and I are buddies across the street. So it's my pleasure to be here before you today to go through his garage addition, which I would like to direct the presentation more to the conditions of the ARC. Our intent was to match in execution and materiality the existing 1995 frame home. Thank you. Some of the details related to material, the specific details related to materiality of these elements are intended to match, and we look forward to finessing those period-appropriate materials with staff moving forward. Some conditions were noted as part of this consideration that we had originally proposed a driveway ribbons on the front of the property approaching the front-oriented garage. Transportation requested that we straighten those out, and we are happy to do that, and we'll show that accordingly. We need a design exception for the height of the structure. The city only permits a 15-foot height for accessory structures that are at accessory structure setbacks. We believe that the district has plenty of examples of two-story structures within those setbacks, and we will be underneath the maximum requirement or the maximum allowed height of 22.5 feet by several feet with what we're proposing. Like I said, we intend to match the existing materiality of the structure, and staff requested that we provide a more period-appropriate gable vent. A quick neighborhood survey of different gable venting strategies employed yield that there's a lot of variation. This here at 602 East Francis Avenue is what we're currently considering an octagonal vented solution, but we're happy to move away with coordination with staff. But there's a lot more examples than I originally noticed prior to this application of interesting contributing gable venting designs across different styles, of course, kind of bled into Victorian near my office, which is also in the historic district. But I just want to show you examples we're considering. Staff requested that we provide additional windows on two facades. The north facade that orients on the alley, shown here, and the west facade that orients on close to the 3-foot setback on the fence. We are also relocating the proposed mechanical equipment from that west side out of the setback into the interior of the lot. And we'll screen it accordingly from the interior backyard. We'll discuss with staff the consideration of proposing potentially 2 clear-story fixed windows to match the front facade of the existing structure, which has 2 of those elements, one on the stairwell, one in the master suite. to provide some additional highlight, but still allow for shelving in the garage structure. So the material palette and roof materials, like overhang materials, exterior wall materials and finish, foundation and enclosure materials, doors and windows, garage doors, trim materials, porch materials, we request that we accept all the conditions to provide that information and can resolve it with staff if the board so finds the massing form and general materiality, or sorry, general architectural characterization and proportions appropriate. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, we'll move on to the staff report.
Elaine Lund, Historic Preservation Staff. Staff finds that this application is consistent with the Tampa Heights design guidelines, with the condition that a design exception must be granted for the accessory structure height. And with that, I'm available if you have questions. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's anyone here to speak for or against this project and would like to come forward, you may do so at this time. Anyone? Seeing no one, will close that portion of the hearing, and we will begin asking questions, starting on my right. Mr. Sutton?
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Just as a point of reference, if I may, what particularly is driving the need for the, if you will, the design exception for your building height? I mean, this is a one-story garage. They're not normally found to be extraordinarily large.
Sure. What the owner approached us with from a program perspective was not just sort of the garage proper for car storage, but they also wanted kind of a loft space. And this was after considering a two-story accessory dwelling stacked unit. When once that was priced out, we decided not to move forward with the unit, but still provide some storage space with this loft. And so that lifted the gable end up. And the proportion of the garage doors, we didn't want this to be too squashed, I guess, kind of from a brow look from the front facade. So we kept that at a 10-foot ceiling height for a very, let's say, airy garage with this storage above it. So we could lower it. I mean, we have the space to accommodate. We'd have to adjust some of the facade elements. And if that was a condition that we needed to agree to, it would take us out of design exception. But this was the program requested guide the proportion proposed.
So what you're actually building here is, for these lucky people, an actual functioning attic.
I like to think so. And we struggled with the truss design in order to accommodate a usable height without triggering this kind of further. Because we had to change the pitch from a 412 to a 512 in order to accommodate this, but we're hoping that's still a negligible or imperceptible slope adjustment.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Question for staff. Are we allowed HVAC units in the side setbacks?
As long as the units are, I believe, 3 feet from the property line, yes.
As long as the,
As long as the unit is 3 feet from the property line to allow access for maintenance issues.
oh, okay. So in this case, it doesn't work, right? Because they have.
Actually, now it's in the yard.
Yeah, now it's in the yard, but I just wanted to make sure that it needed to be in the yard, and clearly it does. Thank you.
And if I could add to that, there's an eave-to-eave separation that we're just meeting here, that's not historic district, but actual 27,
Zoning,
156.
yeah.
So we can't move south to accommodate in the north facade, and we can't move it east because then we start cutting off the garage door driveway entry. So we're kind of left, the easiest piece to move now is just moving that
Okay,
equipment.
thank you very much.
Yep.
No further questions.
Mr. Prokop?
I had a similar question to my commissioner at the far end with, why the need to break and ask for a variance on the height requirement.
So just to be clear, that's a separate, the design exception is a separate process from what you're here for today. You're not here to determine whether or not the design exception should be approved or not approved. That's with the zoning department.
Okay. But I did have the same question. Also, in the elevation, it looked like the HVAC unit was sitting on a shelf. It looks like it's a shelf-mounted unit on the wall of the building rather than on a slab at grade?
It was a little mini split system proposed that could be attached to the shelf
Okay.
or to the exterior wall.
Yeah, I don't have any other comments or questions.
So it looks like your roof materials are proposed to match the existing structure. Are your overhang dimensions also to match?
Yep.
So if it's 2 foot on the main, you're at 2 foot on, okay. And the materials, so the rafter, soffit, and fascia will all match?
All the same execution.
Okay, and then same thing with exterior wall materials and finishes. You've got the siding. Your foundation enclosure will be different. You've got like a larger foundation enclosure on the main structure than the accessory, or am I misreading that?
Yes, so because we aren't at, I guess the change in elevation that isn't occurring, it's going to remain concrete flush transition. Yes, I see. We are proposing block for this building with the siding above. We could, if it's the board's pleasure, let's say, propose not the same 2 or 3 block height, but let's say like an 8-inch reveal of that masonry
Perfect.
execution. Okay.
And then, do you have garage doors or doors selected as far as design of the garage doors or that side pedestrian door?
No, the design isn't has not been selected. All we've considered at this point is generally the character that is proposed is the intended with the divisions provided, and that it be a single door with a lift
Sure.
gate condition.
And then, do you have any proposed lighting on the exterior of the accessory structure?
No, but we would, we'd welcome that if we can work that out with staff.
Okay. I have no additional questions.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I had one more. I forgot, I had actually noted this earlier. Could you bring up the garage door elevation again? Zoom in, if you could. So the intent is to kind of masquerade this door as a big swinging door, even though it's a roll-up? Correct?
Not a roll, I guess a tilt-up.
Okay. I'm just gonna make it's a nitpicky thing, I'm sorry. But it looks like you're making it look like 2 doors.
Yes.
But that each door then has hinges on both sides.
This is a model that has that look of a 2-door system that is hinged, but it operates
Okay.
combined.
It would make more sense to me if from a little hardware detail standpoint, that if you had those little fake pairs of verticals, that there'd be one big pair in the center, and you wouldn't have 2 pairs on either side, and there wouldn't be hinges in the middle either. If that makes any sense?
I guess not implying that this opens
But that's the only reason you put hinges there is
Right,
because you're
to- yeah.
implying that it opens. But you wouldn't have hinges in the middle because there's nothing for it to hinge from.
Yeah, I guess it's conveying a look that there is something that it's hinging from itself, but it isn't in reality.
Yeah, it just looks like really bad, fake detailing.
I mean, if you had a big wall right there in the middle, it would be a different matter.
If there was a giant post in the center, it would make sense. It just doesn't make any sense to me to have hinges in the middle of the thing.
Yeah,
It
it's
just- it
a
just-
door hinging on another door is what it's kind of
Yeah,
conveying, yes.
and you referenced earlier, we got the earlier packet, you referenced earlier that, you know, there was a blue house down the street with the octagonal, window at the top. You brought that one, that photograph of that one up. The decorative vent, I also agree, the hexagonal thing looks a little, out of place. But the doors, yes, the doors on that, I've actually seen this garage. The doors on that garage are more appropriate than having the bunch of hinges in the middle that they just look like they're glued on.
Isn't that a single unit door though?
Yes.
Correct. And I'm not sure how to rectify that. But the idea behind this door is that it's supposed to look like it opens up. And with hinges in the middle, there's no way for those hinges to work or function, even if they were real.
I guess is the reaction, we were going from a position of implying but not actually providing those horizontal openings. I guess, I don't think there's a hesitation to select a material that is less dishonest about that
I think that can be
mechanism.
worked out with staff. I'm just
Okay,
pointing
sure,
out
yeah,
that
yeah.
it just looks a little hokey.
Okay, that's, that's fine.
I think the question here is, are you open to looking at an
Yes.
alternative?
Yeah, absolutely. So this was definitely more of an exercise in proportion and program than it was in material, and so in that we are happy to kind of,
And I think staff is well-versed in
Yeah.
what I'm referring to and probably can give you good advice.
yep, happy to
So,
adjust.
I have a couple of questions for you, Mr. Federica.
Yes.
Do you have a law section here today?
Yes,
Thank you.
but the condition noted, and we have
Can
not
we
yet.
zoom out? Thank you.
Not yet adjusted a 3/4 inch section where we have these at inch.
That really doesn't matter for our purposes.
okay.
Even though staff prefers that scale, it doesn't matter. As you can see, you can zoom in and out, so.
Right.
So we were talking earlier about the foundation, and you were talking about CMU walls. And you mentioned something about changing the coursing or something. So can you,
Lifting this up, removing some siding from the base course to reveal that?
can you zoom into that? And currently, the block is exposed below that, right? And it's just painted to match the
Yes, so
siding.
if we're doing it here in the section, and the elevation is implying that it's wood to the ground, this would prevail.
Does
What's
not the existing dwelling also have the same similar detail?
It's just higher on the existing dwelling.
Do you have an image of the dwelling that you can zoom into? Because those pictures are so small, I can't tell.
He does have an elevation.
Do you have any
No,
of those pictures?
yeah, I have it on the elevation, but I know we're being,
If it's shown, indicated correctly on the elevation, I just need to understand
yeah,
it.
so I get that.
But because it's painted the same color as the siding, you really don't notice it in these pictures. Okay. I think whether it's higher or lower isn't an issue for me. It's an accessory structure, and accessory structures often vary a little bit from the primary. They're not an exact copy or replica.
Well, this isn't a contributing structure either.
I understand. I don't know who made the comment about lifting I'm just,
And looking at it
Asking.
now, I think let's say it's more appropriate to tie into the base of the door than to, let's say, have reveal above the transition.
I would agree. I mean, I think it would look weird that your door's just hanging out in space
just kind of
and yes, and that's
sitting trash.
not, that's typically not the way we do it, and it's a waterproofing issue for your architect wife.
Yes.
So, please put all those
Okay,
in front
yes.
of her. The other question I had was, there was a comment here about matching the window pan depth to that of the windows in the primary structure. Can we go back to the, wall section that you had up and look at the window? The lower part of the window. So I think, ooh, that's good. I think what this comment is about, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, is that the windows are placed very far forward of the exterior wall, and they really should be set back more to give more of that shadow play that we're used to in more historic homes. And I would assume that the primary structure does that, because it seems like there's a lot of shadow play in some of these images. So we just need to make sure that that is done, if this is approved to move forward, that that is reconsidered in terms of the placement of the windows themselves. That may mean that you need to look at extenders or something for the sill to do
Okay.
that, but you can handle that with
Yep.
staff. And then other than that, I think that's it for me. Any other questions for Mr. Federico or staff? No? You have 5 minutes for a rebuttal.
I appreciate all the comments, and we look forward to working this out if it moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing and we'll discuss the case. Anyone with any comments or cause for concern
I just have a couple of minor notes to be worked out.
for anyone else?
I have no issues.
No issues.
I move, I'm on the wrong side. Move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in ARC 22-224 for the property located at 504 East Amelia Avenue with the following conditions: that the design exception be granted for the accessory structure height, that the window panning depth match the primary structure, that any foundation details are approved by staff, all door, garage door, hardware, and lighting selections are approved by staff, and that the mechanical screening is approved by staff.
May I also add, with respect to the materiality, that they be coordinated with staff to match the existing structure as stated?
What materiality?
Siding, trim, roofing.
When he said that they match, but that roofing, siding, finishes, soffit fascia, et cetera, match the primary structure. Because based upon the finding of fact, the proposed project is consistent with the Tampa Heights design guidelines of the city of Tampa for the following reasons: that the scale, massing, orientation, and trim and detail are consistent with the district.
I second the motion.
Do you understand the conditions put forth, Mr. Federico?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor, please state aye and raise your hand indicating so. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I do.
Mr. Myers.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. Moving to our next agenda item, which is ARC 22-184 for the address of 2114 Southview Avenue. This is in the Hyde Park Local Historic District. Currently, there's a vacant parcel. The zoning attached to the parcel is RS 60. The request this evening is for a certificate of appropriateness for new construction for a primary structure, an accessory structure with site improvements to include a courtyard. Past action on this site, on page 3, previous action speaks upon there was a non-contributing structure that was demoed in 2020. That was not part of this request. That was from a prior owner that requested that demolition. And then this gentleman came forward to purchase that and to request what you're going to see this evening. I'd like to start with the Sanborn map from 1929 as a point of reference. Property in question is highlighted in the green box. You have Howard to the west. It's one parcel off of Howard. It does face Southview to the north. You have Deco to the south. On Howard, currently, there's new construction going on here, a commercial building that I'll show in the photos. As you work your way to the east down Southview, you have the commercial building. You have an alley that's open and will be improved. On the east side of the alley, you have parking that is sufficient for the commercial use on Howard Avenue. Then you have the empty parcel. Then you get into the residential component of Hyde Park. To the north of Southview, you have construction going on as part of the Epicurean, part 2 of Epicurean, if you will. As part of that new construction, these multi-family structures were retained on site to work with the scale as the new construction came forward. As you work your way to the north, this structure was relocated as part of that new construction on Howard. This was an empty parcel. This is Burns Wine Warehouse, and then Burns as you kind of complete Howard to give you the lay of the land in that immediate vicinity. This is our vicinity map. This is the whole district of Hyde Park. This is Howard Avenue to the western portion of our local district, and the property in question is over here, so you get another point of reference of where it is at. This is a current overhead. You see that when Hyde Park was gridded out, and I don't know if that's a word or not, but we're going to use it, you have this leftover triangle here. So once again, you have Howard, and you have Southview, and then Deco. That creates that triangle there. You're going to see some challenges with the front yard setbacks, how they step with the block face of Southview and the photos that I'm going to present. But once again, you have the structures that face Howard Avenue. You have an alley, you have a parking lot, and then you get into the RS60 zoning classification that you're going to review this evening. This is looking from Southview toward the south at the empty parcel. You see the multifamily Melrose project that is period appropriate, dates back to the early 1920s in the rear. This is kind of just panning over to the west a little bit. This is going to be part of the parking lot that complements the parking for this structure on Howard Avenue. Moving to the interior side of Southview, this is the abutting property to the east. You see some of the stepping here and the challenges with the parcel. And then as you look down the block, you see that same stepping. And then as it comes to the apex, the lots were not deep enough, so you have some garage doors that enter off of Southview as well. This is looking down Southview to the east. This is looking down Southview to the west, and then Howard Avenue. You have the multi-family structures that I spoke about that were retained on site and incorporated into the master plan that faces Howard. This is directly across the parcel in question. These are those multi-family period structures with the construction going on. That concludes the photo presentation, and I'll have the agent address the board.
Thank you, Ron.
I can just use this one.
Click on your icon and you're ready to go.
Okay.
See if I remember how to use PowerPoint. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robert Motley. I am an architect. I did design this building. My client is not here today, but we have been designing it together and gone through many different challenges to kind of make this work on the site. So thank you for having me. Ron's already gone through some of the details for me, but I think I enhanced some of this as well. We see that we have the location. I also did some existing street conditions I wanted to look at all of the parameters of the buildings around it, especially like along Southview Block. So in this one, I'm looking at the south side, which is what Ron had pointed out, made mention of the average building offset from the sidewalk. I actually took a measuring tape, went out there and looked at each building and how far off of the sidewalk, presuming that that's the property line. And also the finished floor height of it. I thought that both of those were big criterias to make this project happen. On this side, we have 4 feet as the offset, and then the average height is about 1'8". The opposite side of the street, on the north side, it's a little bit more generous. It's about 20-foot setbacks. The floor height's about 2 feet, but we also have some multi-family structures there, as you can see right here. And then when we get into the site, just as Ron was mentioning, right across the street, we have the new Epicurean expansion that is occurring. This is a little rendering of what we found. You can also see the historic referenced remodel there, but then also a substantial increase that also kind of touches upon the Southview Street. Here's the sidewalk condition that is right in front of the existing vacant site. This is looking in the rear. This is the Mediterranean apartment complex, approximately 40+ feet in height. And then that's another view of it. Historical references. Use that apartment building that's off of Deckel as a perfect reference. Thought that what we're looking for is kind of a Mediterranean style type of architecture. Also have some other references that right down the street. The garage, this is a home off of Deckel. The garage actually has some of the features that I think we've adopted as well. Again, off of Deckel, another type of Mediterranean. This one has a little bit more stucco treatment. Have a very nice appreciation for the parapet and the barrel tile roofs right here on this particular photo. So then on to the new construction. So the site plan, as Ron mentioned, it's an RS60. We're looking for a request for the design exception for the block, just on the front, just to match with the rest of the infrastructure or fabric of the other buildings. So currently that's 25 feet for the RS60. What we're looking for is approximately 4 feet, which fits in with the average. Everything else, the building footprint, resides within the setbacks. We have side setbacks at 7 feet, rear setbacks at 20. Detached garage actually fits within the setback requirements. The overall height, 35 feet. We're just under that by a couple inches when it's all said and done. Just as some site features, we're looking to also do a site perimeter fence. We're not going to do one up in the front, but obviously on the rear and then on the side, we'll be doing approximately a 6-foot high concrete stucco finish to match the building with probably a cast stone cap and then pediments up at the front of where they would not exceed the front of the building. So they would still be presented off to the back of it. Materials, as far as like the site goes, we're looking at doing brick pavers, focusing in on the driveway. We would do obviously some kind of a grass strip to break up some of the brick paving, wrought iron metal gates just for privacy, and then hardware and lighting would also kind of be dark in presence as well. This right here is the site. You can obviously see that I've kind of modeled some of the volumes that are around this area. Again, we have the big Epicurean Hotel, the expansion over to the side. I wasn't quite sure what the footprint was. My main focus, again, was just along Southview. You can see that the property itself, it's a little wider. The client had purchased, I guess, a little extra piece of the property, so he was able to get a little bit more room, so we was able to build a little bit more. 4-story building that's in the back. Reason why we have the design layout the way it is to establish some kind of privacy. Again, this is another kind of look at the offsetting, showing that line of demarcation. You can now start seeing the building footprint, how it kind of tapers, but then also kind of works with the other buildings that are along the street. The 2-foot setback here for the porch and buildings, a 4-foot, 4-foot, and then 2-foot. And keep in mind that this is also the garage off of Deckel, so the main house is actually off of Deckel. Did a site coverage study. Since we have a courtyard, it's going to be primarily of green space, looking at approximately 65% coverage. Here's a pretty interesting view of kind of looking at those volumes and trying to understand the volumes that are surrounding the site, then the building itself and how it fits within the fabric. It's another view looking east. Right here is Southview Ave. Site plan, again, 4-foot is what we're looking for in the front setback. You can see that the outline of the building does kind of have this staggering shape, kind of do like a nice little rounded area. But we go from side setback over on the east side, and then our driveway is all the way down here on the west side, which is also comparable to the other buildings. Everything else seems to be situated on the west side as far as like car entry. Then we have a 4-car detached garage on the back side. You can see the setback parameters and everything fits within there. Here's the courtyard for breathable space. We have a 5-foot separation between the two, and there are parapets that are situated in that area rather than having any kind of overhang or eaves. Now we're taking a look at some of the elevations. We're going with a Mediterranean style elevation. This is the front of the structure. You can see that it's primarily of stucco. We have barrel vaulted roofs. We have a mixture of different volumes that is really trying to break up the size of the building and the massing of the building, but the proportions are very complementary of the sidewalks and the pedestrians. This 1-story structure is one that just kind of pops out over onto the street. Your main entry, you can see that there's a 2-foot step up, and then your main entry door. I'm not showing any lights right here, but we would be putting in some kind of light sconces to really enhance that. Courtyard area back in here, these blue items here, it's cast stone, but the infill would be some kind of a decorative tile that we would place in there. We're looking at here's another view looking at it, and these are interior elevations of the courtyard area. Looking at wood frame construction, potentially cedar, like a stained cedar all throughout, where you see all of the wood elements, including the outlookers. This is a perspective elevation of it. You can kind of see how this building really steps back, but it still addresses the sidewalk. Another view looking closer. I'll go into a detail here. This particular drawing is showing the 30-foot 4.9 to the top of the parapet here, and that is from grade. So again, we'll just talk about the materials for it: clay barrel tile roof, decorative wood outlookers. We would also do a tongue and groove type of eave to the underside. Cast stone would primarily go around a lot of the borders. Also decorative cast stone features on the sill. Wherever there's 3 aside, we would do some kind of a decorative cast stone column. Stucco finish, we're gonna determine the actual kind of finish once we're on site. Currently, I'm showing this as just a smooth stucco finish. Decorative metal railing system, just to complement the entry. Impact rated window and doors, but we're looking to use wood as a material. I would promote Colby window and doors, one that I looked up today. Seems to fit the profile. Again, exterior lighting. We'd end up having, he wants to have the gas lit. Cast stone sills and borders all throughout. You can see it around the opening. Bless you. And then a pedestal right at the entry feature as well. It has cast stone caps, stucco finish. Brick pavers would also lead up to the front door. And then we would have somewhat of a little watermark, a continuous stucco banding that would be established at a 2-foot high. That pretty much aligns with the finished floor, but it does break up the how it touches the ground. Again, with the roof, here's a good profile looking at the roof, and here are some examples of what we're looking at for the roof. Again, the bottom right shows the outlook or profile that we would be trying to go for. And again, we would be looking at it as a stained wood type of profile. Building sections, wall section. This shows how we're stepping up into the site. It would be a continuous 2-foot high level, including all the way back towards the garage. And then we would end up sloping all the way back to the street in order to try and get, easy access into the driveway area. Here's some examples of some of the materials that we've collected. We do have the wood balcony. It's a pretty good example of the idea that we're promoting with the natural woods, but the dark metal fencing, also the corbels that we also show on there. Some examples of the tile just to kind of have some color to pop out in certain areas. This is another example of the driveway type system, the lighting, decorative metal fence, dark hardwares. We would do a boxed out window, but that would also be of a finished wood, cedared stain. And here are some of the profiles directly from the model. And then we have some renderings that we've put together, to break up some of the volume, or actually some of the stucco finish. We're looking to do some, like a vine wall along some of the features. This right here is where the stairs would be. This is where the wine cellar would be, but we would just clad that in some kind of vines. Get a good idea of the courtyard. This would not be the final layout for the courtyard. You can see some of the corbels, and then the continuous balcony. And then the garage area also has like an outlooker kind of breaking up that facade as well. Another decorative opportunity to put some kind of a tile feature. And then this is the final slide right here, kind of looking directly at the front of the house. And then obviously we're looking to maintain, have an appreciation for the past, have an appreciation for, the surrounding buildings. And I think that this project has is in a really interesting spot in that it's almost as though it's like a gateway leading into the historic district, because it's right there on the edge. But you also have the commercial aspect of it. And you have some of these bigger buildings, especially the one that's in the back, that allows this building to be a little bit more special, a little bit bigger. But anyway, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Move on to the staff report.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. On page 3 of the staff report, the application of standards, when we look at the Hyde Park Design Guidelines for new construction, there are certain bullet items that we go to, scale, height, and width, the massing and building form, the setback orientation, the facade proportions and window patterns, entrance and porch protections, and roof forms. In staff's opinion that this was all met. The staff's finding that this application is consistent with the Hyde Park Design Guidelines with the plans that were submitted to staff and uploaded in Acela. He came forward this evening with no variances. Although it's a large structure, he was able to get everything within the setbacks established by the zoning classification. If this is to move forward, there is a design exception for the front yard averaging that must go through the process. Going through the conditions that I attached to your staff report, referencing for the scale and massing, I think he showed that in the entry to his presentation, along with the setbacks and elevation from grade. He showed the references along the immediate vicinity along South View. He did mention some paving, the transition from the sidewalk to the front porch, and then the vehicular access. Traditionally, that is scored concrete. He talked about some pavers. If there's intermediate walkways within the site, can be an alternative material, but traditionally, the transitions, pedestrian, and the vehicle pads were scored concrete. He talked about some fencing. Additional design elements are required if the fencing is part of the request this evening. I don't know if he has that or if you want to delegate that to staff. We do look at fencing on a day-to-day basis. The final stucco pattern is one that we usually, for these high-end Mediterranean-style homes, is, you know, the contractor put 3 or 4 different selections on site, and then we go out there and we, as a group, come to a conclusion which ones are more appropriate. And then to conclude, he has some garage doors off the rear. They're not visible from the right-of-way, but it's still part of our palette that we should look at. He did mention the windows and doors to be a Kobe brand, all wood. That's a brand that we worked with in the past and meets our criteria. And then lastly, the hardware and lighting. He just showed kind of references of where they were going to be, and we would want to see what the final selection is. That concludes my portion. I'll be here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ron. If there's anyone here who would like to speak for or against this project, you may do so at this time. Seeing no one, we will go ahead and close that portion, and we will begin asking questions, starting on my right.
I will begin with the fence conundrum. Yeah. Do you have any details respecting that, or sections or whatever else? And perhaps best if you could pull up your site plan and we can discuss this further.
Yeah, let's pull it up. This was something that was kind of presented to me probably about 5 days ago. So this is the concept of the fence right here. Oops, sorry. Really, you can just kind of see it in the elevation, and the way I was interpreting it was that it would just be a simple 6-foot high fence, stucco finish that would match the building, and then we would just do
With a water cap.
Yeah, and then we would do some kind of cast stone cap that would match
And this
the
is
kind
going
of
to go
borders.
around the entire, more or less, perimeter of the site.
Well, the thing is that there's, that commercial site already looks to already have some kind of a wall that's going up, correct?
Can you show this?
Then let's take a look at your site plan and take a look at where this starts, stops, terminates, gates, those kinds of things.
Sure, okay, so if you can let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more here.
If you do presentation mode, it'll show without all that other stuff.
I was gonna try and zoom in, but you see, I'm stopping it right here, and this would be like a pedestal. That would then just be square. And then the fence would carry all the way back to here. And currently, there's some kind of a wood fence that's alongside this person's property. And then on the back side, it's completely exposed, so we would be putting the fence along here. This is the section that is a little bit unknown. I'm not quite sure, but it looks as though the last time I drove by the site that they were doing some kind of their own site fence, so
So-
we would pretty
Is-
much.
Are you proposing your fence here, or is that the adjacent fence?
If,
No, we would use the adjacent fence.
if Ron could just have a moment, I believe that the project before you, which is your neighbor, as part of their site approval, their certificate, they are putting a wall there, correct? And it is a masonry or stucco wall, right?
By code, a parking lot that use abutting a residential has to put up a 6-foot high masonry wall.
Correct.
Okay,
So, Mr. Vila, just to verify, just to confirm that the fence the fence is outlined on the site plan? Okay.
okay. So basically that, if you want to call it the bottom fence that we're looking at, is really more of the adjacent fence that you're going to be dovetailing to in one
Yes, sir.
form or another. Okay, so we got that going. Now, are there going to be any gates involved with this fence? Because you did show us a gate, but I'm thinking that might be more related to your courtyard.
Yes, that is correct. And in fact, whoops. Let me go back here. Okay, I have my cursor here.
Okay.
So I'm not showing the swing, but this is where a fence is, and then this is also where an access fence would be.
So for right now, you're not proposing a yard separation gate in your side yard, or for that matter, a security gate in your driveway at this point in time? That's not part of the plan?
No.
Okay, so that, in that same vein, if we take a look at this elevation that we have here, top set, the small, to my right-hand side, the AC unit. How are you planning on screening your AC unit?
So
Or units, for that matter?
So we're gonna have internal units. One that's gonna be for the detached garage will be in the attic. Then the other one will be within the house, so it'll have its own dedicated closet. Condensing units are actually gonna be on the third level. They will be hidden away based off the parapet roof.
So you're dealing with rooftop at that point?
Well,
So basically, what we see here in this elevation, as well as in your site plan, is no longer mechanical equipment in those locations.
On these elevations, 3 of the 4 show
Uh-huh,
units.
Ground padded mechanical units.
yeah, over on, what is it, the east?
Can you show it on the
East
site
side.
plan?
Yeah, let me see if I can. Yeah. So I have one right here, which would service the detached garage. If I go to the, whoops, give me a second here. I'm trying to get back into my presentation mode. Actually, maybe I'm trying to find the roof. So then on the roof level, this right here, this is a terrace.
Yep.
And there's an access door on the third level. We would end up doing the condensing units right over here in this little alcove. And you can't even see these because the roof or the wall of the roof is pretty high.
Then let me continue, though. What are you going to be doing about the screening for your condenser unit for your garage set, for your garage building?
Put a protective fence around it if necessary, or a screening fence around it if necessary, but it is
Or
all the way.
landscaping or something, but it's
Yeah.
not, but the screening component is not shown right now.
Well, it'd probably be landscaping more than anything, but it is all the way towards the back of the property. So, but there is some landscaping here that is not shown.
That is all I have for my questions right now.
Mr. Myers?
Just a point, it seems that there is no door separating the garage from the unit up above.
The garage from the unit.
Yeah, there's the stair for that the stair for the bedroom above the garage
Uh-huh.
comes down directly into the garage, does it not?
Yes, that's correct, but there's a landing there.
Yeah, but there was no door. This is beyond our purview.
No, there's an access door that leads out into the courtyard area. And then there's the garage doors on the opposite side. And then when you get up to the level of the stairs, there's also an access door that separates the whole entire, basically closes off the garage from the upstairs living unit.
Okay, all right, thank you. And the question for staff, the front yard averaging, that is a design exception, and that needs to be a condition, is that correct?
Put it, if it's to move forward with a favorable recommendation, put that as a condition. That's a separate process that goes through zoning. And what he showed this evening is sufficient evidence to receive that, as indicated. He's at 4 foot. At no time can you come more proud than the averaging. There were some at 2, which brings the averaging a little closer to the property line, but he's gonna maintain it at 4 foot as the front yard kind of telescopes back at certain sections.
Mm-hmm. And the lot coverage is also permittable, right?
That will
That's
be
good.
something that will be reviewed at time of permitting
Okay.
through a plans examiner.
Okay, thank you. No further questions?
Mr. Prokop?
I don't know where to start. There's no attempt to save any trees on the property, correct?
That is correct. But we will be replanting, doing
Because
new.
it was a rather wooded, when you look at this from an aerial standpoint or from a Google Earth standpoint, it's just the whole neighborhood is filled with trees, except for the big apartment building in back. Do you have any idea what the square footage of the previous house was that was on the site?
I do not.
Or does staff?
I know it was a modest 2-story kind of craftsman style.
I noticed in the back, the rear elevation, the garage doors were represented as very nice, not in the elevations, but in the renderings. There were, elegant, modern garage doors, while the rest of the house is not modern.
Correct. Yeah, that,
And they just didn't seem design compatible with the rest of the architecture, which is another story.
yeah, oh, sorry, go ahead, sir.
It's okay. I'm just gonna tell you what my feelings are. Everything on this site is pushed to the limit. Everything's pushed to the setbacks, everything's pushed to the height, everything's pushed to the volumes, asking for reduction in front setback. The setbacks, I guess, it's our job to look at what's compatible. It's an RS 60 zone, which is single-family housing zone. And trying to figure out what the next question to ask of you is before I make commentary. Was there any, I guess, evaluate or consideration that the front of the house would be much more transparent, as is typical of Hyde Park houses? The first story is almost always a porch, so that it's open air, and then the main volume of the house is set back from that, and then even that main volume is usually very transparent, and people don't put curtains up, and you can see into the house, and there's people walking down the sidewalk can see your books and your that's the spirit of Hyde Park, was there any consideration to try to make, this looks like it was built as a fortress, and it's opposite the feeling of Hyde Park. Was there any consideration making it much more compatible with the Hyde Park genre, so to speak?
Yes, we went through a couple different renditions. And at the end of the day, it really did boil down to security, at least in the client's eyes. And that's where the idea of trying to open it up was the courtyard. And the,
Which the public never sees, because you built a wall around the property.
sure, sure, yeah.
I don't have any other questions.
Just to your point on the garage, yeah, the renderings were probably about like a month old. And this was more of kind of the look I was kind of approaching for on the garage. It'd be more of like a wood cladding, and then if you even look back at the rendering, it wasn't showing those, that outlooker profile, so.
Actually, one more question. Is the square footage on here? Is that indicated anywhere?
69?
It's on your staff report, first page.
Okay. And is that conditioned, is that 6,900 square feet conditioned square feet?
No, that's total.
That's total.
Yeah, there's a 4-car detached garage. That's also calculated. into that.
Calculated in the
Yeah, yeah.
6,900. Okay. That's all I have.
I wanted to ask about the windows on what's shown here as the bottom left elevation on the second floor. And sort of, if you could just discuss the scale of the windows and the pattern of the windows.
These guys here?
Yeah, yes.
So that's in kind of private quarters, and bedroom areas. So those would, are you stating that, or are you asking whether or not they should be a little bigger?
Yeah,
Or,
they seem rather
little
small
squatty.
in scale
okay.
for the size of the
Mm-hmm.
wall.
Mm-hmm. It's something I can look at to adjust a little bit more. I'm trying to process it just of what's happening on the inside programmatically, because it's kind of like the bed wall, there's a closet space and stuff. So, but I think that it's a valid point. I can look at that adjustment.
And then, so when we're looking at these 4 elevations, are there additional areas that you were planning to include that deco tile, or are we seeing sort of what your proposal is?
Oh, I'm sorry, what?
The decorative tiles?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that would be kind of like in these blue
Right.
areas. I didn't really have any other indications. I think maybe on some portions of the, yeah, it kind of occurs a little bit in the alleyway leading up into the courtyard area. And then when I look at you can see how it kind of just hugs the side here. And then if there's, the 3 set of windows, there could be some kind of tile cladding.
Could you, I think the renderings are helpful for my next question, if you could
Okay.
pull up the front rendering.
This one?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
perfect. So in this image, the right side of the image is sort of your introduction to this house.
Mhm.
And to my fellow commissioner's point, this is typically like the easing in to the space. And I think
Right.
that it feels that little jut out sort of creates a barrier, and understanding security concerns. But even that massing feels like a bit of a breaking point or a wall to the rest of the street. Just in its sort of form that it is today. I don't know how your program works or how that becomes modified, but in Hyde Park, it is typically more open and welcoming, where here it feels like we've come off of the commercial areas and we've sort of hit like this big mass before we get to sort of what undulates back, and we've got green and different materials and nice arches, but that feels very like sterile or stark right there.
And that's also why we were trying to make it a one-story element. I was really honing in on,
Oh,
I
yeah,
have to like tame that.
Yeah,
So.
understood. I don't think I have any additional questions.
Can you tell us are those true mullions? Are those inside the double pane, the mullions on the windows?
Oh, no, they would be outside.
Okay, they're awfully slender.
Yeah,
The,
that's the rendering.
and so those are fixed windows, they're double hung, or they're casements?
Casements and fixed.
Okay, so
Yeah.
like the dining room is fixed?
Yeah, the dining room would be fixed. All of these would be fixed except for the bedroom windows, which would be up here in that top right corner. Can you see my cursor? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. And then probably the powder room could also be operable. And then wherever the bedrooms would be, those would also be operable.
All right, thank you.
There's a note on staff report about the sliding door system. I think it was on one of the elevations you had up just a little bit ago in the
Yeah.
courtyard on the lower floor.
Yes, sorry about that. So,
What is the intent for those? They're very plain right now in that rendering or that elevation.
no, I've changed that, hold on one second, to a folding glass partition. So that's what this would be right in here. So you can see how they're a little bit closer together. So those are operable and they fold and stack.
Will they have any sort of mutton treatment or anything like that? Or are they intended to be these full light panels?
They most certainly can. I did not show those though.
Okay. Go ahead while I try to remember my other one.
Staff had made a comment about the pedestrian and vehicular access to be scored concrete as opposed to the pavers. Is that something that you're open to as well?
Absolutely, yeah.
Actually, that does remind me. Can you put the site plan back up, please? Are you certain that the turning radius and all of that is appropriate for the 4 cars to come and go?
Yeah, my minimum is at 24.
24, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Were other options considered for the placement of the garage in relationship to the accessory structure in relationship to the primary structure?
There were other options, but due to the size of the building, I needed to get it within the setbacks. So I didn't have to have a limitation on heights and size of the building. So it ended up becoming more prominent within the setback. So that's how we situated it.
The garage has living quarters above it, correct?
That's
So
correct.
it's
It's
a
part of the
dwelling
house.
unit, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Alrighty. Are there any other walks besides the front walk? No. You have no connectors to the drive, correct? And the drive is all.
That's correct.
Did you intend for your curb cut to be brick paved as well?
No, that's a graphic thing,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, I have no other questions. Anyone else with any questions?
I had a question at the end of my, at the tip of my tongue, and it had to do with, staff. Do we recall if actual residential building height is measured from grade or from the crown of the road? I just want to clarify that.
And I believe it's measured from grade on site.
Okay. I do want to say that I do like, appreciate the fact that you rendered in those big, like, bird's eye views, you rendered some of the volumes of the adjacent structures appropriately. Because some of the, I guess, the early packet we received, they were just boxes, and they weren't really articulated as to what they were actually, how they were actually articulated and built, at least the two adjacent.
It helps me to understand it as well, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then convey it to everybody, so.
That's
Any other
all.
questions? No? All right, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal. If you want to add anything to the record or respond to anything that was said before we close the hearing.
No, I don't think so. I think everything is. I mean, I'm willing to work with you guys on, like some of the window openings, if it's a proportion thing to make them a little bit deeper. I think that one, if you look at it, yes, that can kind of go from a 2-2 to a 2-3 type of window.
Okay.
But other than that, I think I have no further comments.
Mr. Vila?
I'd like to show one thing. I see everybody's kind of struggling
If you
with
hit
it.
escape, it'll get out of the presentation mode. It's on this, there you go.
They did it.
It's not letting me go here. Is this here?
They just need to switch over to the.
He needs to give you the mouse back.
Can you go to the dot cam, please? I don't want to lose your presentation.
He's coming out of the door.
Don't delete it.
Ah, yes, tech support.
Thanks. Thank you, sir. As I was coming over here today, I kind of looked at, the vicinity of the zoning classifications associated with this parcel and around here. So you get an idea of what's going on. This is the triangular parcel, Southview, Howard, and Deco. Property in question is here. So on Howard, you have commercial general. To the south, all of Deco is residential multifamily, and then you have some PDs. So this parcel is kind of really boxed in right here, as it does go into the RS60 zoning as it branches out, but this particular parcel is right here. So hopefully that helps you in your discussion.
Thank you, Ron. Anything else, sir, before we close the public hearing? You're
No,
good?
ma'am.
Okay,
I mean,
thank
I'll
you.
sit. Yeah.
We'll go ahead and close the public hearing and we'll discuss the case.
I'll start off with what I started saying is that I think everything on this entire property is pushed to the absolute limits, if not beyond the limits. The comment about matching the setbacks along the street, along Southview, each of those other places where the call-outs were 2 feet and 4 feet were to either corners of porch columns or edges of porches, except for the 2 garages down the street, which are actually garages to houses not even on this street. They're garages to houses on the other street. So the actual setback for this street is 25 feet.
So just keep in mind that they're going through a design exception process for the front setback. So that's a separate process from what is in your
Right,
purview.
this is a certificate of appropriateness, right?
Right, but for the design of the structure, the setback issue is separate, that's being processed with the zoning department.
Okay. But I guess, you know, the closeness to the street of a two-story volume, which is what this is, it's a two-story volume put 4 feet off or 4.5 feet off the sidewalk is what is being presented. Whereas all the other houses down the street, might be encroaching into the setback, you know, closer to the sidewalk is a porch or a small one-story volume, and then the two-story volume is set back from that. The other houses on the street are 2,000 square feet of conditioned space, not including their porches. And this is nearly 7,000. I'm just having a very difficult time using the word compatible and looking at this house. It's almost like the boxes are all checked off, but there's no compatibility. And part of, you know, going into the Hyde Park design guidelines itself, it's not permissible to add a building to the site which does not maintain or blend with the heights of buildings on adjacent sites. And the buildings on adjacent sites, residential, single-family residential in the RS60 are all 1/3, even less than 1/3 the size of this house
We
being
can't only
proposed.
consider the other RS60 houses though, because
I understand.
it's adjacent to also commercial properties and hotel properties.
And I understand that, but we still have to compare, I always felt you have to compare animals to animals. You know, you have
I
to
think we
compare
have to
apples to,
compare
apples to oranges.
the area.
But the commercial buildings are commercial buildings, and they go by different rules. A multifamily house, or multifamily structure goes by different rules. A single-family house,
Agreed. However, an RS60 is allowed to be as high as 35 feet. They're not asking for a height exception. They are meeting
Correct.
that 35 feet.
Right.
I think what the grappling here is the coverage of the site. Traditionally,
and volume.
the volume is related to it. Traditionally, sites would not have been historically, unless they were the larger parcels, which tend to be closer to Bay Shore, would not have been filled as much, as greatly. And the other thing, and this is something that's causing me heartburn, is the amount of hardscape on this site now. It's just, it was a really sad day when the tree ordinance was changed and it became easier to clear sites the way that people can clear sites today. I'm just gonna put that right out there on the record, and I think a lot of people in this city who've been here long enough agree. And to see a project come forth, and we get people wanting security, peace of mind, wanting to feel like they're secure in their homes. However, this is a neighborhood that's known for its accommodations and its commodiousness in terms of the public realm and its relationship to the private realm. I think there were certain comments here made tonight about how the project transitions from that zone of the public, and we understand that this is an edge property, that it does have all that commercial activity. Howard can be crazy, and you certainly, this owner's property certainly is at the edge of one of the most active areas on Howard on certain nights. We get that. However, there is something to be said about how one lives in relationship to their neighbors, and those neighbors also include residential. And to create it just feels like a desert's being made in the middle of this beautiful oak oasis that we have. Tampa has been known as a city beautiful. It hasn't ranked in the city beautiful in a long time. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that our tree canopies are disappearing.
I just want to caution the board that this is not about the trees getting removed. He has to meet the tree code. I believe he stated that trees were removed, but that's not your purview. He has to meet the requirements of the landscape, the landscaping per that department.
We understand.
Okay.
But my point here is that and we know there are several layers of review. We know that zoning has to look at, we know that transportation, all of that. But if there is anything within the realm of possibility when speaking to your client, to discuss the fact that how one lives on their site matters, and how one produces structures on their site matters. And I can't imagine living on this property myself personally, because it just doesn't seem like it's full of life. It is very much a fortress-like condition.
It's a house that belongs on Davis Island.
I don't know where it belongs. I just don't know.
Right.
I just don't think that it's very appropriate as it stands right now from its presence. However, architecturally, from an aesthetics point of view, I get the style. I think the details are spot on. I think the materials are spot on. I think the windows and the treatments and the trim are spot on. I've done this type of work myself, so I get it. I just think when we think about historic districts, there's a whole conversation about context, right? And it's not just the immediate lot or the 2 adjacent lots or the 3 or 4. It is an urban context, and we talk about alleys a lot, we talk about sidewalks and streets a lot, and non-vehicular presence. So those are the things I think probably are the greatest concerns among, I think, the questions and the other comments that have been given tonight. So I don't know what that means in terms of putting together a motion, but.
Right. Yeah, I've been working in historic neighborhoods for 40 years. And the word that I keep coming back with is compatibility. It's not checking off boxes. If you check off all the boxes, then there's no need for a board to determine that this is appropriate for a historic neighborhood, because you've already checked off all the boxes. I find the volume of this house in many ways is not compatible with the Hyde Park neighborhood. And I feel very strongly about my need to protect the neighborhood as it stands, and to not label a house such as this in Hyde Park, across the street, outside of Hyde Park, fine. But to not label a house such as this as appropriate, I can't use that word, appropriate or compatible with the neighborhood, for many, many reasons. Not the least of which is the 2-story volume 4.5 feet away from a sidewalk, with no transparency to the inside of the house. No porch, no nothing.
Mr. Sutton?
I don't want to say I necessarily agree, that there comes a point in time, I can understand where the money comes in for development and the need for space and size and all the rest of that sort of stuff happens to both, private, commercial, or corporate development. But there comes a time when you have to just sit back and think about when is something new too big for its context with a known smaller pattern? At what point is too big too much? And I get from the discussions of my fellow commissioners, I get from them the vibe, the feeling that we've gone past that point. Too much for our context. So the question I beg is, where do we go from here?
And I think I'm sympathetic to the fact that it is immediately adjacent to several commercial properties that are large.
I agree.
I think what I struggle more with as opposed to site coverage, which is maybe excessive, is the transition from facade, because this is a property that will be visible to pedestrians on Howard.
It's,
So how does the facade of this property marry the commercial properties that you're coming off of into the historic residential district that it is introducing the pedestrian to?
the historic district, or for that matter, the general context in itself, that has a very public sphere about it, particularly with the building fronts and the street fronts and the sidewalk fronts.
Because the adjacent properties that are commercial also went through the board, so they too are approved historic district properties.
Yeah, yeah, but to Mr. Prokop's point, we do consider the type of use often when we talk about, even from a historical frame point. We will ask for evidence of commercial, institutional, what have you, examples from the agent. We do the same with residential. And yes, many of those projects have come before this board, and many of us have sat on this board during the review of those. But I think we're always cautious about the appropriateness based on its location, its immediate and its far context, as well as its use historically, what that means and what it has meant in terms of a fabric for a neighborhood. So while I'm certainly aware and conscious of how larger masses can affect residing on a particular site, the fact is that historically commercial and multi-residential, such as the one immediately to the rear of this property, have lived in close proximity to one another for over 100 years in this neighborhood and other historic districts. So by saying that it's got a lot of neighbors, a lot of mass, does not mean it's necessarily appropriate for this particular site or this particular use.
I think that Mr. Prokop has raised a very good point about the transparency, particularly of the one-story element at the front. And if some way it could be, if in some way that, it's a dining room, it is already 2 feet above grade. If there was additional transparency, if it became somehow, it perhaps referenced some of those porches that have been turned into conditioned space, which is very common in the district, I think it might be helpful. I also feel it's, some of the, that sometimes the design in terms of the windows trespasses into a kind of Disney-esque treatment of the Mediterranean style, and that there are many, many instances here in Tampa where there is a simpler Mediterranean that can be referenced. But I think that, unfortunately, there are many examples in the district also of these sorts of massive houses. And so I wish that the design was slightly different, but I'm not certain that, but I do not feel that it is, it's not entirely out of character.
Any other thoughts?
I just want to go back to page 1 of the guidelines. The proportion of a new building and the major relationship to neighboring buildings are components in establishing compatibility within the neighborhood. I just don't see this single-family house being compatible with the neighborhood of Hyde Park residential structures. It should be, and again, the second sentence, should be of similar proportions to neighboring buildings. And the neighboring houses are 2,000, 1,700 square feet, 1,900 square feet, 1,800 square feet, and 2,000 square feet. with porches within the first 25 feet from the sidewalk. And I find the volume and to be in violation and be incompatible with page 71 of the Hyde Park Design Guidelines.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
is there something that,
Well, I think I'm going to ask for a continuation on this.
okay?
I'm hearing all of the points of one of the, if I can just point out, one of the elements I think that became a focal,
We have to reopen.
So if you
Have to
want to
wait?
ask for a continuance, you can ask for a continuance, but
Okay.
if you want to provide additional information, they're going to have to open up the public hearing.
oh, I'm sorry.
So do you want to just ask for a continuance?
If I can open it up just a little bit, I just wanted to make a comment. Sorry to,
I move that we reopen the public hearing.
I second the motion.
All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. One. Sorry, please go ahead.
my apologies. I didn't know if I could pull the, how do you pull it back from? Sorry, okay. This building down here, this is the apartment on Deckel. This is one that has, you know, as you were mentioning, it's been there for over 100 years.
I live there.
Yeah. And I think that this one is kind of a perfect example of the Mediterranean style, but also how it's addressing the street. We have a 4-story element. It does have a break where the courtyard's there. But at the same time, I think that it's not too different from what we're trying to achieve. And I think that there's variations that are kind of occurring all throughout, like, the district. As, you know, as I've put this design together, it has been with the mindset of trying to break up the volume over and over again, just on that front facade. So when you look at the front profile of it, there's quite a bit happening. I understand that what you're saying is that it just doesn't have the transparency to it. I like the idea of it can be more transparent in the 1-story volume to kind of give it that porch feel. I think that I've seen those kinds of homes where it really has like the nice corner feature of where it's just all windows. And even fits the profile of a Mediterranean style. So that's all I really want to say about it. Sorry if I opened it up for no reason.
It's okay.
So-
Are you still asking for a continuance?
I think I'm going to ask for yes, I am. I'm going to ask for a continuance. Yes.
Okay, all right.
And what's the date?
Ms. Owen, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're into September 7th would be the next available date.
Is that,
That's correct?
okay,
That's correct.
Okay.
September 7th, 2022 at 5:30 PM.
okay. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and reclose, we're gonna close the public hearing again, and then we will make the continuation occur. So anyone volunteering to make the continuation?
Move to grant a continuance in case ARC 22-184 for the property located at 2114 Southview Avenue to the September 7th public hearing at 5:30 PM.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor, please state aye and raise your hand, and can you so? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries 4-1. Thank you, sir. Move on to the next case.
Elaine Lund, Historic Preservation Staff. The final case on our agenda this evening is ARC 22-288/REZ 22-06. This is for the property located at 407 East Palm Avenue in the Tampa Heights Historic District. And the request is for a recommendation for a rezoning from RM24 to a PD. Going to the photo presentation now. You can see the 1920s Sanborn map with the structure that is still standing there on the site. The site is highlighted in green. You can note that there is an alley running behind the property. There were at this time several accessory structures to the rear of the primary structure. This is the Tampa Heights Historic District map showing the boundaries of the local and national historic districts. You can see that this is located toward the southern end of the district. And this is the present day aerial of the site with the house, showing the house on the south side of Palm Avenue between Jefferson Street and Central Avenue. This is the front of the house. This is the east side of the structure. And the west side of the structure. And this is the rear, the south side of the structure. This is a property located directly to the east, a vacant lot at the corner of Central Avenue. And then to the west, another historic contributing structure. And directly across the street are residential properties. This view is looking east along Palm Avenue, past the intersection with Central Avenue. And this view is looking west along Palm Avenue, so the subject site would be to your left. In the alley behind the subject site, you can see that this is a paved alley. Here we're facing east, looking towards Central Avenue. So the subject site's to your left, and here the subject site would be to your right as we're looking west along the alley toward Jefferson Street. This is the property that's located directly south across the alley. And the adjacent structure next door, this is looking at the rear of it and noting the parking lot that is in the off the alley here to the rear of the adjacent structure. That concludes the photo presentation, so at this time I'd like to ask the petitioner to present the request.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members. William Malloy, 325 South Boulevard. I'm the applicant's representative here. What we're really going through here is a remodel of the existing structure. Part of the plan for the remodel was to allow for a mixed use in this instance. So we're going through a PD rezoning with the city right now as well. The intent of the mixed use is to allow the second story to remain residential while the first floor would be office. With that, we've triggered some parking requirements, which is why we're here this evening, why I'm here this evening. If I can show this. The way we've articulated the parking on this site, and this is the parking required by code.
Can you zoom out, please? I'm sorry, so we can see the entire site.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's as far as it goes.
Thank you.
So the intent of this plan is to provide all the parking for the office on the first floor here in the rear. That's 7 spaces, including the ADA, and then provide the residential parking up front in a traditional driveway, tandem style. We discovered upon review with transportation that the Heights, and I think this is entirely appropriate, does not want to see required parking in front of the building wall where we have a space here. So to that end, we'd have to either ask the city, I believe, for a parking waiver or, well, get some grace from this board, quite frankly. There is a fairly good reason, I believe, that the parking is drawn as it is. We would happily extend this driveway, which would effectively bring everything behind the building wall, the two spaces, but for two rather significant camphor trees, which are right here straddling the property line. I think one's indicated with a 39-inch trunk and one with a 42. They're camphors, they're grand trees, they're not protected. We'd prefer to see them stay. I think you can see from the east elevation that was shown previously, they're big trees. They don't need to come down unless they need to come down. So our request today is really pretty simple, and that would be to allow us in this one instance to provide one parking space in front of the building wall for the residential use. And I am happy to answer any questions about that.
Could you zoom out just a little bit, please?
Pardon me?
Can't zoom out?
I'm sorry, I can't.
I want you to zoom out a little bit.
Oh, yeah, zoom out, pardon me.
That's all it goes.
There's a detail, no, that's the big one, yeah.
Does that help you?
I'm happy to hand this to you if it helps. We did look also very closely at trying to manipulate the back area to add an additional space back there. The geometry didn't work, and also it would start affecting our green space requirements. So that was not viable. And that concludes my presentation, yeah.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to the staff report then.
Elaine Lund, Historic Preservation Staff. Commissioner, staff finds that this application is consistent with the City of Tampa Code of Ordinances in accordance with Chapter 27-113A2J, which reads that with regard to applications for rezoning, changes to land use classifications, or comprehensive plan amendments, for this board to review and recommend reasonable land use changes to the extent necessary to preserve the historical integrity and appearance of the locally designated, in this case, historic district, in accordance with the applicable design standards. While the Tampa Heights Design Guidelines, on page 67, state that it is not permissible to place parking in front yards in residential areas, and that parking spaces must be located behind the front wall of the building. The preservation of the trees on the site and meeting the existing, the current requirements for parking spaces per the city code are considerations that must be taken into account. With that, I'm available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Ms. Lund, can you confirm whether or not is there just one waiver that's being asked in this rezoning, or are there three per this staff report? How many waivers are they asking for?
I would defer that question to the applicant.
I don't believe that per the zoning, we've articulated any particular waivers. This may be a waiver process that I'm in right now, so don't let me misspeak. But other than that, I don't believe there's anything we need to address.
So this is a rezoning application,
Correct.
and per the staff report, there's 3 waivers that are requested on the site plan for the rezoning. You've mentioned one in particular to allow tandem parking for an office use.
Correct.
But there are also 2 additional waivers that are in the staff report.
For consideration of this board?
Correct.
There are 3 listed, she's correct.
There's 3 total.
Reduce required use buffer from 15 feet to 6 feet until Okay, and pardon me, I assume that these were all associated with the tandem parking request, because I think that there's some symbiosis between all of them. If we're going to allow the tandem parking, obviously we have to allow the maneuvering on Palm for backing out potentially. I will be very honest with you, the 4 to 6 foot opaque fence issue is new to me. And I'm not quite sure how to speak to that.
Okay.
Use buffer.
I would say that it would be very difficult for us to make a motion if we don't have all the information.
Yeah,
That's
I know,
appropriate.
It's absolutely appropriate, sure. 15, is this from adjoining property?
If I may speak to the waivers requested, I believe the required use buffer is for the parking area.
The east buffer's on the parking area?
To buffer it from the adjacent property.
So on the buffer here, we have, I think that's a type B, and I see. So the reduction is that, the ask is to reduce it from 6 feet to 4 feet here. And in lieu of that, we've done a planting series along the line there as buffering in substitution of the additional distance.
Can you pull that?
Mhm.
We're gonna say that this is still part of your presentation because it obviously was
thank
not
you.
complete and you had some time remaining. I'm not sure how much time, but, please explain that one more time. What are you required to do and what are you asking for?
I believe that the requirement here is 6 feet from the property line to the building line. We're asking to reduce that to 4 feet, and in lieu of the 2 feet, plant this considerable vegetation wall here as a buffer.
In addition to the required wall fence that you have to have?
Correct, I believe the opaque fence is, yes.
From 15 feet with a 6-foot CMU wall. Reduce the required buffer from 15 feet with a 6-foot wall to 4 feet with a 6-foot opaque vinyl fence.
Mhm.
With landscaping.
With landscaping.
So
as
that
indicated
needs
on
to
the
be
plan.
amended.
Pardon me?
That waiver needs to be amended because you said you're doing, to offset that, you're adding in the landscape as
The
well.
landscape's indicated on the plan, I believe.
Was that required no matter what?
I don't believe that amount of landscaping is ever required as a buffer between properties.
Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, and I can't answer that for you.
I'm sorry.
I don't think any of us can answer that for you, but sometimes that is required.
Ron Vila, staff for Historic Preservation.
She's ready.
On the staff report, there's 3 waivers listed. There's a waiver that is required use to use from property to property. So what he has here is that this property and this property was required by code is a vertical buffering and a horizontal buffering. The vertical buffering is usually a solid wall. In historic districts, walls don't make good neighbors, so we ask for them to relax the wall and put up a fence. The vinyl fence is what's being requested here. I would say put a wood fence in the lieu of a vinyl fence. That's for the vertical portion of that. Then the horizontal portion, it's a 15-foot buffer from the property line to where the stalls are at, and he's asking for that to be reduced. The tandem parking is here. This structure is residential in nature, it's changing its use. If this is a residential application, you can back up into a right-of-way. But because it was changing the use, he cannot meet code by backing up into the right-of-way. But as I believe I heard that all the parking in the rear is gonna be for the office space, and this is gonna be for the residential. The structure is not changing in its vernacular or form or footprint, so it still takes on that residential component.
So we're talking number 3 of the waivers is for maneuvering of the residential parking.
That's here. That's the two tandem
that's
ones
Palm
back into
at the
Palm.
top, right?
That's correct.
We can't see it, so that's why I'm
Oh.
asking.
That's all
I
you
just want to
get.
be sure, it's off the page anyway.
Yeah, that's all
I
you
just want to
get.
be sure that we have that correct. So
That's
this
correct.
is for the residential parking only.
That backs up into the tandem. It's looked at in totality, the whole project.
Yeah,
But
and it's only because they're asking for the PD that they have to ask for this waiver, correct?
That's correct. It's triggered.
Okay.
It's triggered by code, correct.
Triggered by that, okay.
If I may ask, it's, the design guidelines are quite specific in that in a residential area, you have to have all of your parking behind the front wall of the house, exclusive of porch, right?
Historically, in the historic districts, we try to have the vehicular secondary to the structures, that the vehicle didn't take precedent back then. So sometimes it's indicated by the body of the building. At times, there's a porte cochere that's in line with the porch, and if the porte cochere was in line with the porch, it would have a column, and the porte cochere is a parking stall. So it could be surmised that the parking could be at the point of the front porch.
Right. Okay, so in this case, he's gone, the parking space requires going beyond that.
I would get a measurement of 36, if there's two cars backed up, 18 to 18, from the steps to wherever that 36 dimension line is at. There's a lot going on in the site plan, I don't know exactly where that is, but that's for the waiver that's listed here. So it's a portion, it's really the trunk portion of the car, if it does, in fact, proud of the body of the building.
So I'm gonna ask the agent, do you have more that you need to add to your presentation, or?
I do not. I am comfortable with where we are. My focus this evening was on the tandem parking and the backing out. That concludes my presentation
Okay.
on this one.
Alrighty, well then, we'll do the staff, we did the staff report. I don't think we need to do it again. There is no one in the audience, so we're just gonna skip the public comment and, we're gonna start asking questions, which we've started. Anyone else with a question?
Yeah, quick question. Has there been any discussion with the city as to dual use of the rear parking spaces?
Not to my knowledge, in terms of blending the use in the back.
Of dual using it so that one of the spaces could be used as a residential space for 12 hours a day and for business space another 12 hours of the day?
We have not gone down that route, and I'm not sure that the city would be thrilled with it, because it's kind of unenforceable. No, I
Throwing out that
appreciate the
question because
thought.
I try to think out of the box sometimes, but that's, that would solve
Absolutely,
a lot of issues.
absolutely. The issue that we're faced with just right now is meeting the minimum number of spaces.
Right.
That's,
Have you declared, I guess, a time of business for which the parking spaces need to remain business?
So, Kamaria Pettis-Mackle from the City Attorney's Office. I think in discussing a time restriction on the parking spaces will be difficult to enforce, and that's why he's asking to address the parking situation as established on the site plan.
Separate parking. I understand, I haven't dealt much with parking in the city of Tampa, but I've dealt with parking in other places where, the business, from 9 to 9, it's the business space.
right,
after
and
9
this
PM
would be
at
a
night-
contractor's office, so it would be business hours. That idea absolutely holds water. I'm not sure that the city would go for it, though.
Okay, I was just asking the question.
Can I look at the site plan again, please? Might as well just keep it up. Can you put your site plan back up that you had on the Elmo? Thank you. Even if the trees weren't a problem, you can't really move the parking spaces forward very much because you have the steps. You can't be right on the steps because you have to be able to get out of the,
It would not be an
Access.
articulate or elegant redesign. It would take some work. If those trees were to come out and we had to move the driveway further south, that would be some work, yeah.
but my question is, even if the trees weren't there, you could not push the spaces to the building any more than they currently are shown, because you have an egress issue. Then you can't get people in and out of the building. That set of stairs and porch there at the, I'm gonna say the right side of the structure, unless you were to take that out, you couldn't even gain extra space, correct?
Correct, or if those stairs are facing north, we'd have to re-articulate them a different direction. My engineer, who was here Monday night in my stead, has assured me that we can do basically what I suggested, and that we can bring the tandem parking down south. But again, it would remove the trees, and I see your point about the steps. That would have to be addressed as well.
Okay, I don't have any questions. Anybody, any question? None? Okay, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal if there's anything you want to add.
Just that this is a mixed-use project in the Heights. We're preserving an existing structure. We're doing the very best we can with the site, which is very busy and constrained. As I said at the outset of my presentation, I completely agree with the policy about parking in front of the building. I think this is a unique situation because of the mixed use and because of the way they're using this existing structure, bringing it back up to code, and obviously making a fairly dilapidated piece of property a much better presentation for the city. And that's where I'll leave it.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing. We'll discuss the case then.
So we do have a couple of conditions just based on the conversation that we just had, such as the vinyl becoming wood fencing and making sure that the landscaping is in addition to all of the buffers.
It's waivers, it's waivers.
I'm sorry, yes. I have a, can I ask you a question right now? So he had mentioned several times that the front two spaces were for the residential portion of the building. Can we specify that when making conditions that it's noted in the waiver? So like, as it says now, it says to allow maneuvering in the right of way for the parking spaces on East Palm Avenue. Can we say the residential?
You want to specify that that's for the residential? Okay.
Also, as you were saying that, I just realized the second waiver says to allow tandem parking for an office use. The tandem
right.
parking is for residential.
Residential use.
So that needs to be amended. Sorry, didn't mean to.
No,
speak
that's
over
good. So when we make our recommendation, if we recommend approval with conditions, we say that the waivers be amended
Yes.
to read that way? Okay. No?
Yeah, I think they're trying to reuse a historic structure in an appropriate way, and the parking is an issue, but, you know, anytime somebody spends the money and the time to restore and reuse a piece of historic fabric appropriately, you know, I don't like the fact that there's, someone's gonna be backing up onto Palm. I drive Palm frequently. It's not a slow-speed residential street. But I think, other than them trying to go another route, I think this is appropriate. I also think there are such things as they're called tree savers. They're little ventilation caps that you can put into paving around tree roots that allow the tree roots to survive even while being parked on. And I've used them a lot, but yeah, I don't have a problem approving this personally. Does anyone else have any?
I don't have a problem approving it either. However, these are camphors. They are an invasive species.
Yeah. So, to use an argument made earlier, not historic to have your cars forward of the front of a home. And, I just don't find it appropriate.
Are the front, I'm curious, do we know, did anybody else notice on board, if the entrance to the residential portion of the structure was in the front or is it in the rear?
I did not ask that question, but there are two entryways possible, either through the porch or that side one that is immediately behind the tandem.
Right, but we don't know if either one of them actually leads to the residences on the second floor.
In either case, there are still ways in which to rework the site, in my opinion, as a professional, in regards to some of the notation that you made, that this problem could be addressed. And I don't know, I have issues with cars parked in front yards personally, so, and I don't think it's appropriate for the historic district.
Okay.
Backing into Palm is not really a problem for me. It happens all over the place with historic homes, pulling out from Port Cochere, so.
Just done with care.
Pardon?
Just done with.
Always.
Hopefully.
Even backing out of my garage, done with care. Anyone willing to make a motion or another matter to discuss?
Move to recommend City Council approve ARC 22-288/REZ 22-06 for the property located at 407 East Palm Avenue for the proposed rezoning from RM 24 to PD with the following conditions: that the waivers be amended to read Section 27-284.3.3B to reduce the required use buffer from 15 feet with 6-foot CMU wall to 4 foot with 6-foot opaque wood fence with additional landscaping. Section 27-283.12 to allow tandem parking for residential use. Section 27-283.12 to allow maneuvering in the right-of-way for the residential parking spaces on East Palm Avenue. For reasons that the recommendation or the request is for reasonable land use change to the extent necessary to preserve the historical integrity and appearance of the locally designated structure.
I'll second.
All in favor, please state aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Nay.
I was gonna say all opposed, please say nay. Raise your
Nay.
hand, nay. The motion carries 3-2. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
We are adjourned. Thank you. See you next month.